We're going to play a turn of the Conquistadors. We're going to start out with the quick start setup to the standard game. So we'll be using the standard game rules, but with an accelerated setup that gets us into the interesting play just a little bit quicker. And the first thing we do is pick our Conquistadors from the deck of Conquistador cards that's in front of us.
I get Cortez and Balboa. We're both very good.
Yes, those are. And I get Pizarro, excellent, and Almagro. So put those away. Some of them might enter later in the game. And the next thing we do is buy units. We have 32 pesos to spend on units.
For Balboa, I'm going to buy 3 foot units. They cost 2 each, so that'll be a total of 6. For Cortez, I'm going to buy 3 horse units, 1 artillery, and 3 foot units. Horse units are by far the most powerful in the game, but you can only buy 3 per turn. Having any artillery with your expedition gives you a +1 bonus to your roll. This cost me a total of 27 pesos, so I go to 5.
Okay, well I'm going to buy Pizarro, a pretty good sized army, 2 of the 3 horse units that I'm allowed. That costs 8. And then 4 foot units. And we will buy him an artillery, so he gets that benefit, so that's 19 in all. And then I will go ahead and spend all the rest of my pesos on a pretty good sized army for Almagro as well, a horse and a cannon, and 3 foot, and that's going to blow out my pesos completely, so I am down to 0 on the pesos track. The next thing we do is we get to place some initial town and village markers. Now I should explain that this represents native villages and towns that have already been discovered, but we get to choose in this accelerated quick setup where that discovery already took place. So it just represents what in the full game would be an initial turn or so of discovery.
2 villages and a town. The first village can go in any level 0 space, and the second village can go in any level 0 space or level 1 space adjacent to the first village you placed. The town can go adjacent to either of your 2 villages. I'm going to start off by placing a village there.
Okay, well I am going to send Pizarro to explore central Mexico, where there are many opportunities to find empires. Basically the higher numbered spaces are the richer spaces, so there's a pretty good chance I'll find some good gold there.
I'll put my town in this level 2 space.
And I will put my town 1 space inland from my first village, so we found that much already.
I'll put my village in this level 0 space. This puts me very close to these 4 legend spaces, so if a legend appears in one of those spaces, I can quickly move to it and discover it. Or if I draw a legend card, I can play that.
Now let's see, I could go head to head with what Andrew has done, but Cortez has a pretty good sized army over there, so I think I'm going to have Almagro go instead to this part of the board that nobody's gone to yet. I should explain that since we're playing as a 2-player game, we have elected to use just the north map, so you can still see the south map, but it's not going to be in play for our game. In the full 3, 4, and 5 player setup, then you use both maps. The governor index markers go in space 0 of the governor's favor track. The governor being a very important non-player entity in the game. His favor is valuable in recruiting troops and scoring victory points.
Impulse marker starts on space 0 of the impulse track. Our victory points start at 0.
Good, and I think we are ready to go.
We put our conquistadors on the map. I'll put Balboa in this village and Cortez in this town.
I will have Pizarro and his large army lead the march into central Mexico. My other conquistador, Almagro, I will have explore down there.
At the beginning of each turn, we discard as many cards as we want, and then we draw cards until we have 10, and then we discard 2. This turn, of course, we start with no cards, so we just draw 10 and then discard 2. I'll discard pits and cut saddle straps.
I'm going to discard Betrayal and Treachery, used mainly for combat between expeditions, and I don't envision any of that on the first turn.
On the first impulse, I'll play the Mississippi Legend. This lets me put the Mississippi Legend in one of the legend spaces on this map. It lays 3 spaces away from all expeditions.
That's a good break for him. Now that represents the possibility that there's something there, some big river. These legend markers represent rumors, possibilities, tales. He's got to send Balboa there to find out if it's real.
I'll also play Buenos Aires Ambos, which lets me move 2 Conquistadors in the same turn. I'll start by moving Balboa to this level 0 space and go in for Discovery. I get a 4, which gives me a village. I'll also move Cortez to this level 3 space.
At that point, Cortez is going to encounter an ambush used against any expedition attempting discovery in a level 1 or higher space. Draw units and attack. We draw Indian combat units randomly from a cup or a hat. This is a level 3 space, so we draw 2 units. The units vary a great deal from strengths of 5 all the way up to 40 or 50. The first unit is 20, that's a pretty good sized one. And then the next unit is 40. That's lovely because that's actually a back-printed unit. It takes 2 hits to kill.
I will play Tactical Advantage, which lets me roll first in the first round.
So we had the reaction card, which is a reaction to his move. Now we're playing combat cards as part of the combat. I am going to toss in Painted Warriors, which doubles all of my pieces. And then the other is Human Sacrifice. His force immediately suffers a morale hit because they don't like the prospect of becoming a human sacrifice. And if any of his pieces suffer hits in the combat, which is pretty likely given the size of this army, then he's going to lose a space on the governor index, because the governor doesn't like people becoming human sacrifices either.
I have 33 points of firepower, so I'm rolling on the 30 column. I get +2 from Cortez and +1 from my artillery. I roll on 11, which gives me 2 hits. I will flip this one over, and I'll destroy this one, because it does not have a flip side.
I get to do my combat. I have only the 15 unit remaining. It is doubled to 30 because of the Painted Warriors. I roll a 10, which is 2 hits. In each round you have to inflict 1 hit on every unit before you can inflict 2 on any. So I get to put hits on 2 of his units. I will flip over 2 of the horses, of course. That flipping doesn't have any adverse effect on them. But if I get another hit in a later round, I can destroy one of those flipped over pieces. Because of the human sacrifice, one of his units did take a hit. His governor index now moves down 1, so he is out of favor with the governor at this point. So that concludes the first round of combat.
I roll a 5, so that's going to be 8, which gives me 1 hit.
Well, I still have the 15. He does get to participate in this round, doubled to 30. I roll an 8, which is enough for 1 hit. That will kill one of those horse units. And that will also move the governor index down 1. If the Spanish lose any units in a combat with the natives, the governor index goes down 1.
Now we roll for Discovery. I roll a 2, but I get +1 from the Indian ambush, so I actually get 3. I discover a city.
So he gets that benefit from the Indian ambush, the idea being that that huge army that attacked him has to come from somewhere, so it actually makes him more likely that he's going to find something, and something large in that particular space. I am going to take advantage of the fact that he is out of favor with the governor to play an arrest warrant, which lets me and other players, if there were any, attack his expeditions. To make sure that I stay in favor with the governor, I'm going to use a special kind of influence, the governor's daughter. Using influence obtained through a liaison between a member of your faction and the governor's charming daughter, move your governor index 1 box to the right. Pizarro will march inland to this level 2 space. He will attempt discovery there. He'll roll a 3, and that is good enough in a level 2 space to get him a town. So you work inland from villages to towns onto cities, and we hope to empires. That's the hierarchy that precedes it. And that concludes the first impulse, so we'll move the impulse marker one box on the track. The box it's in is the number of impulses you have completed.
I will play Letter from the Crown. This gets rid of the arrest warrant. Then I will move Balboa to the Mississippi. I roll to see if the Mississippi actually exists. I roll a 2, meaning that he is killed. I'll play Mano de Dios, which lets me reroll. I get a 10. He is removed from play, and will return at Santiago de Cuba at the beginning of the next turn. He descends the entire length of the Mississippi, and the Mississippi is removed from play. I get 60 victory points.
I will continue Pizarro's march into the middle of Mexico, a level 3 space now. I get a -1 modifier for being in a level 3 space with only a town adjacent. I don't have a city adjacent. But fortunately, I do have a local guide to cancel that out. So I will roll in total a 3, which is enough to give me a city. That's the end of that impulse.
I will move Cortez to this level 4 space, and I'll play an imperial emissary. That gives me a +1 to the discovery die roll. I roll a 5, which gives me an empire. We place the imperial cities and the capital city randomly in the 3 closest level 4 spaces. There's one, there's another, and there's the last one. We also put the king in the capital city.
So it's the space you did the discovery in, and then the nearest 2 level 4 spaces, which in this case are these 2. One of those 3 chosen randomly becomes the capital. Pizarro, for his part, is going to try to do some diplomacy with this city before marching further into the inland. His hope is he's going to make an alliance with that city, which would be very helpful to him for a base of supplies and also troops. So we will do a diplomacy action. Pizarro has a diplomacy rating of 2, which is quite good. I'm also going to use this trade goods card. So that gives me a total modifier of +3, which means a pretty good chance of that alliance that I want.
I'm going to play Bad Translation to subtract 2 from that modifier.
We roll a 9, that becomes a 10. That is not good enough for the alliance. It is good enough to get me a food point, which will help at the end of the turn. And it also gives me a chance of getting either an asset card or rolling for some gold. An asset would be something like an interpreter, for example, or a local guide, which might be very helpful, but I'm going to go for some gold instead. I roll on the diplomacy gold table, and I get a modifier of +1 because of the outcome of the diplomacy action. And the result is 4, which will become a 5. So that gives me 8 points of gold, which I will put with the expedition. They move around with the expedition until I turn them into victory points or spend them.
That's the end of the impulse, so we'll move the impulse marker. Cortez is going to plunder the imperial city.
Because he's plundering, the city will fight back. We draw 3 units this time because it's an imperial city. The first one is a 15. It's about average. The second one is a 12, and the third one is another 12. So these units will fight Cortez.
Horses get an extra round before the first round. I'll be firing on the 16 column. I roll a 6, which turns into an 8 because of Cortez's combat rating. That gives me 1 hit, so I'll destroy the 15. Then the first round happens. I'm rolling on the 24 column. I roll an 8, which gives me an 11. 2 hits.
Those 2 units do get to participate in this round of combat. They're worth 24. They roll a 7, which is good enough for 1 hit, but that's not going to help me. It will flip over one of his horses, but then the combat is done because the native units have all been eliminated.
And now we get to roll for gold. I roll a 4, so I get 25 points of gold. Every time you plunder, there's a chance that it gets plundered out, and you don't get to get any more gold from plundering it again. I roll an 8, so it is not plundered out. Also, the city I plundered becomes hostile, I'm also going to do a division of gold. In a division of gold, you choose any amount of gold with an expedition to divide. 1/5 of that gold, rounded up, goes to the king. This is called the royal fifth. Then every 4 foot and cannon units take 1 gold, and every 2 horse units take 1 gold. This is also rounded up. The rest of the gold becomes victory points. You also remove 1 morale hit. I will divide 3 gold.
Almagro is going to march inland and try to discover here.
I'm going to play a lost card, which will subtract 1 from your discovery die roll.
I roll a 1, which with the modifier becomes a 0, and I find nothing but mosquitoes. That is the end of that impulse. As stated on the track, we now have to check whether the turn ends. We roll 2 dice. The turn will end on a 2 or a 3.
We get a 3, so the turn's over. Balboa is going to return at Santiago de Cuba.
We have some end of turn activities, one of which is subsistence. Everybody needs to eat. Pizarro's expedition will eat up that food point that they got from the diplomacy. Almagro's expedition does not have any food, so he has to roll on the morale table. He rolls a 3, which is going to give him a morale hit, but unfortunately he is also in a mosquito-infested area, so he has to roll a second time. He rolls another 3. He's now got 2 morale hits. So unsurprisingly, his expedition has bad morale given that they're deep in the jungle with no food, lots of mosquitoes, and no gold in sight.
Balboa does not have to eat any food because he's in Santiago de Cuba. As long as you're in Panama or Santiago de Cuba, you have food there, so you don't have to use a food point or make a morale check. Cortez does have to make a morale check. He gets a 5, so he does not have to take a morale hit.
So that's one turn of the Conquistadors. We hope you've had fun watching, just as we've had fun playing. We were playing here today as a 2-player game. The game works very well in that configuration. It also works well in 3, 4, and 5-player multiplayer setup, and there is a special set of solitaire rules as well. It is for sale now on the Compass Games website. We hope you'll try it out and enjoy it. We will be supporting it actively online, so we hope to see you there, and we look forward to your comments and to your questions. We're also thinking about making another video which would be more detailed tutorial of the rules and discussion of the cards, many cards that we weren't able to show in the example today. So that's it for now. I'm Jon Southard.
I'm Andrew Southard.
Good gaming to you.